Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. The program is about to begin. Please welcome the President and CEO of the Georgia Historical Society, Dr. Todd Gross.
Well, good evening and welcome to the 2021 Georgia Trustees Gala. For those of you joining us this evening who may not be familiar with this event or the Georgia Historical Society, we hold this program annually in conjunction with the Office of the Governor. In 2008, in partnership with the Governor's Office, the Georgia Historical Society reestablished the Georgia Trustees as a way to recognize contemporary Georgians whose commitment to service and accomplishments reflect the highest ideals of the original trustees. Tonight, I will be joined by the 83rd Governor of the state of Georgia, the Honorable Brian Kemp. Governor Kemp and I will induct the 2021 Georgia Trustees, Juanita Branco and David Abney, who will then engage in a lively conversation about business, leadership, and life philosophies. For reasons that are all too familiar to those of you watching this evening, this is the first time that we have held this event without a live audience. Although our friends and guests cannot be with us in person, we know that you are with us in spirit, and we hope that you enjoy this special broadcast of the 2021 Georgia Trustees Gala. We're gathered here safely in Atlanta and in the midst of a global pandemic to celebrate the founding of Georgia, which happened 288 years ago when General James Edward Oglethorpe landed in Savannah and established Great Britain's last colony in North America. Tonight, we honor two outstanding Georgians, Juanita Branco and David Abney. Through their service, leadership, and accomplishments, they represent the best of the American spirit. The Georgia Historical Society is the premier independent statewide institution responsible for collecting, examining, and teaching Georgia history. This gala is the culmination of the Georgia Historical Society's Georgia History Festival, our signature K-12 education program that teaches history to over 250,000 students statewide. The focus of study for this year's Georgia History Festival has been Tear Down This Wall, Georgia in Cold War America. During the past year, students of all ages have explored the impact of the Cold War across 75 years through a multitude of educational programs, including virtual conversations, classroom resources, and training opportunities for teachers. This important educational programming was made possible through the generous support of many sponsors and supporters from all across the state, all of whom are listed in the program and online. Every year, the Trustees Gala is branded with a different theme that is inspired by the focus of study. While traditionally this theme is reflected in the decor of a ballroom, this year our 1980s theme is being presented via the graphics you see on your screen. The co-chairs for the 2021 Georgia History Festival are Frank Blake, Bob Jepson, and John Sherholtz, and I want to thank them and the entire Georgia History Festival Committee for their hard work and leadership, especially during this extraordinary time. Next, I want to recognize the Georgia Historical Society's Board of Curators, led by Chairman Tommy Holder. Thank you for all that you do to further the Society's vital mission. I also want to recognize our lead corporate sponsors, Georgia Power, Delta Airlines and UPS, the Home Depot Foundation and Gulfstream, Brasler USA, Camden Real Estate, Chick-fil-A, the Coca-Cola Company, Kreitz Auto Group, Jepson Associates, Macy's, and Synovus. We also want to thank our signature media sponsor, the Savannah Morning News, as well as our statewide partners, Georgia Trend, Public Broadcasting Atlanta, WTOC CBS Savannah, WJBF ABC Augusta, and WRBL CBS Columbus. These companies are outstanding corporate citizens. We are grateful for their support as well as the support of the entire Georgia History Festival Host Committee. You will see a complete list of Host Committee members on your screen. I especially want to acknowledge David and Sherry Abney, Greg and Juanita Branco, Frank and Liz Blake, Arthur Blank, Pete and Ada Lee Carell, Reed and Meredith Delaney, Bob Faircloth, Bob and Alice Jepson, John and Fran Morgan. The Georgia History Festival has many other generous sponsors and supporters. You will see their names on the screen, listed in this evening's program, and on our website at georgiahistoryfestival.org. We are grateful for their invaluable support. And finally, let me thank each of you in the audience tonight. We are deeply appreciative of the time you've taken to join us this evening. Without you and your support, the Georgia Historical Society could not fulfill its educational mission to prepare the citizens of this state to successfully meet the future. As you will see, we believe in the value of history.
In 1733, the Georgia Trustees founded the 13th colony on the noble principle of non sibi sed alis, not for self, but for others. Founded with this same motto in 1839, the Georgia Historical Society, GHS, has grown into a nationally recognized research and educational institution. We believe in the value of history. Dedicated to collecting, preserving, and sharing Georgia history, the Research Center houses the oldest and one of the most outstanding collections related to Georgia and its role in American history. We believe that public knowledge of our past is fundamental to our future. Each year, the Georgia Historical Society selects iconic companies in our state to honor through the Georgia Business History Initiative. By showcasing these companies, GHS seeks to teach Georgia students, citizens, and tourists alike about the pivotal role of Georgia's leading businesses in the economic, cultural, and social development of Georgia and the United States. We believe in educating future generations. The Georgia Historical Society fulfills its commitment to teaching and research by providing educational resources that explore our state's and nation's past. Making the past relevant to the present is at the core of our mission and helps to create a better future. Each year, through the Georgia History Festival, a variety of public programs, exhibits, in-school events, and curriculum bring history to life for students of all ages and encourage Georgians to engage in the richness and diversity of our shared past. We believe our shared history is what binds us together as Americans. In conjunction with the Governor's Office, the Georgia Historical Society reestablished the Georgia Trustees as a way of recognizing Georgians whose history-making accomplishments and community service reflect the highest ideals of the founding body of trustees. The Governor annually appoints the new trustees, who are the embodiment of the noble principle upon which Georgia and the Georgia Historical Society were founded, non sibi sed alis. We believe in not for self, but for others. As the premier independent statewide institution responsible for collecting, examining, and teaching Georgia history, we believe that creating a better understanding of our past helps us to create a better future. We believe in the value of history.
And now, on to this evening's induction. As you just saw, the Georgia Trustees is a distinction older than Georgia itself. The Georgia Trustees created Georgia, and they adopted as their motto the Latin phrase, non sibi sed alis, not for self, but for others. Tonight, we recognize two contemporary Georgians who embody this most noble sentiment. Being named a Georgia Trustee is the highest honor that Georgia can confer. As a part of their induction, the trustees have added their names to the list of original trustees, and they have received their trustee certificates. Ladies and gentlemen, to induct the 2021 Georgia Trustees and present the Trustees Medals, it is my distinct honor to introduce the 83rd Governor of the great state of Georgia, the Honorable Brian Kemp.
Well, thank you, Todd, and please let me add my welcome to all of you joining us for the broadcast tonight. It is a distinct honor to serve as your governor, and it's my pleasure to be here this evening to induct two outstanding individuals as Georgia trustees. While our format this year has changed in an effort to protect the health and safety of my fellow Georgians, the honor of being named a Georgia trustee is undiminished. This past year has truly shown how important it is to live by the motto of the original trustees. Tonight's two honorees have done so and inspire us all to do more, to be present in our communities, to help others. Their accomplishments and service to our state truly reflect the trustees' motto, not for self, but for others. And they are well deserving of our state's highest honor. Please enjoy this tribute to David Abney.
David Abney is a great leader. He's a great servant leader. He's someone that cares. He cares about his people, cares about his business, cares about his community, has a very unassuming style about him that draws people to him.
I would describe David in 3 words: competitive, compassionate, and charming. Everyone I meet who knows David says he's a wonderful guy, and they are right. He is.
Well, he started at UPS. He was going to college at Delta State. His grades were really good before he met me. He was straight A student, but then I think that last semester, I think he got his first B. But anyway, he really loved what he was doing. And so little by little, he just kept rising within the company. And then all of a sudden one day, he was the COO and then became the CEO.
My first impression of David was, how in the world can this guy that is so humble, so unassuming, run this incredibly powerful global company?
A lifelong UPSer, David is brown-blooded. David also puts the interests of UPS ahead of his. A true servant leader.
He's as smart as they come. He's sharp. He understands where he's going. He's got a perspective that I always appreciate. He may not be a man of a lot of words, but the words he uses are very carefully chosen and always very, very insightful.
David's leadership style is very quiet. He's always trying to make sure that everyone is elevated, that everyone feels worthy and that they contribute to the company. So it's a very positive way, but it's a very subtle way.
David has influenced me as a CEO. He's taught me the importance of the responsibility that I carry, not just in this city of Atlanta, but in the world. And he's someone I look up to.
He loves to win, be it winning accounts or beating his personal best running time. He loves to win. David is competitive.
It's just so ingrained in him. It doesn't matter what it is. He's going to be the best at it.
One thing that we share in common is that we're both Peloton junkies. And I understand David is a ferocious competitor on his Peloton, and I won't share his handle, but he likes to go up against a lot of young people and whip them on the Peloton race board. Fortunately, I'm not as competitive as David, so I'm happy just to get my workout in. But that's David. David likes to win, but David also likes to win in the right way. He's someone that I'm proud to call a friend.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to induct David Abney as a Georgia trustee. David, please join us at the podium.
Well, good evening, and really thrilled to be honored as a 2021 Georgia trustee. To just think about joining an organization who's based on a principle of really taking care of others over yourself. That is just a key to success, and I'm just honored from that regard. But also, when you look at the previous winners, the trustees that over the last 13 years or so, the contemporary trustees, and then you look at the historical figures from the 18th century, it's just a quite impressive group. So thrilled to be a part of that group. First, I want to thank the governor for having faith in me that I'm worthy of this honor. You always see yourself maybe a little different than other people see you, but I'm really thrilled to be a part of this. I want to thank Todd and Tommy and the Board of Curators for having confidence in me. Spending 46 years with UPS, I have to thank all those UPSers, past and present, that have really helped shape me throughout that time. And then, of course, I have to thank my wife of 46 years, Sherry. Sherry and I formed this partnership, and that partnership has expanded from 2 people to 13. And throughout all those years, she has maintained controlling interest of that partnership. I don't know how she was able to do that, but she certainly has. But again, very thrilled to be a trustee, a Georgia trustee, and thank you very much.
Congratulations again. We'll take that with you.
Well, congratulations again, David, and thank you for those remarks. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy this video presentation on Juanita Branco.
Juanita is a businesswoman, a lawyer, a civic leader, someone who cares deeply about the community that she lives in, but also cares about the world. She cares about peace and harmony and developing an environment where people can be prosperous and fulfill their dreams.
She is able to communicate regardless of language, regardless of status, on a human level with everybody she comes in contact with.
She's smart as all get out. She is hardworking. She thinks of others rather than herself, which is a huge reason that she has been able to do all that she's done.
Juanita's success is attributed to her family and her faith, her willingness to take risks, and a willingness to learn as she goes. She was never afraid.
She can bring the team together and improve the situation beyond anybody's expectations. Too often, because she is a woman and because she's African American, she's underestimated. But anyone that underestimates her does so at their loss, because she can bring the house.
She's just a darn good person, and she's done well. She has succeeded incredibly. She is a trustee of the people, answerable to them at all times. That's what she is.
Juanita's legacy is her service to others. She could have just been a successful businesswoman, a great mother, a wonderful wife and friend, but her legacy is service. She cares about the future of America and the world, and she puts her flag down.
She is a force of nature and one of the greatest blessings of my life, the greatest blessing of my life.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to induct Juanita Branco as a Georgia trustee. Juanita, please join us at the podium.
First, let me express my sincere appreciation to our governor, the Honorable Brian Kemp. And thank you for this wonderful, wonderful recognition. I'd also like to thank Todd Gross and the entire board of curators of the Georgia Historical Society, most of whom I happen to know personally. But I also want to give a special shout out to my friend and to the board chair, Tommy Holder. Thank you for your leadership of this organization, for your friendship, and just being an all-around great individual. So thank you, Tommy. This is a very special award, and the significance of this award has not escaped me. But when I stop and think about the mission of the Historical Society and its commitment to not only preserving the history of this great state, but to its, frankly, dogged determination to make sure that our history is accessible to make sure that the history of the state is accurate and that it is comprehensive in every aspect of that history, comprehensive in its entirety. When I think about that mission and that commitment, I am even more proud of my now forever affiliation with the Georgia Historical Society. And so it is with a great sense of gratitude and with much appreciation that I humbly accept this award and this very special recognition. You know, I have always endeavored to be a trusted steward everywhere I have served, whether it was on the Board of Regents, whether it was at Clark Atlanta University, the Southern Company, Georgia Power, my own company. I have understood that it is a huge obligation when you carry the word trustee. And so I've tried to do my very best to make sure that in everything I do, that I remember how that obligation and what it means. To guard the assets of that entity, whether it is the property assets, whether it's the financial assets, and I think perhaps most importantly, the human capital, the human assets of an entity. And so I have been privileged to serve an awful lot of our organizations, and I have never, ever taken that obligation to be a good steward for granted. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for this award. Again, looking at the prior recipients of this award, it reminds me of the importance of stewardship and the importance of trusteeship. And you can be assured that for me, Juanita Branco, that will never change. So I give you my heartfelt thanks for this award. I am privileged to receive it, and it will always be with me as one of the highest awards that I have ever received. So thank you very much.
To our 2021 trustees, thank you for your remarks and continue to make us proud as Georgians. The leadership you have provided and the lives you have touched will continue to shape our state for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Kemp, for being with us this evening to carry on this noble tradition, particularly during this extraordinary time. And now to personally introduce the 2021 Georgia Trustees for the moderated discussion, it is my pleasure to welcome to the podium the Chairman of the Board of the Georgia Historical Society and the CEO of Holder Construction, Mr. Tommy Holder.
It is indeed my distinct honor to personally introduce you to the newest Georgia Trustees. Juanita Branco is Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of Baranco Automotive Group, which she founded with her husband, Greg, in 1978. She is a lawyer, a trailblazing entrepreneur, and a respected community leader. Born in Washington, D.C. and raised in Shreveport, Louisiana, Juanita earned a law degree from LSU and had a successful career in law, including serving as an Assistant Attorney General for the state of Georgia. She is passionate about education and has served as chairman of the DeKalb County Education Task Force, the Georgia State Board of Education, and the Georgia Board of Regents, where she became the first African-American woman to chair that board. David Abney is a business leader and philanthropist who worked his way up through the ranks of UPS, starting as a package loader at the age of 18. Born and raised in the Mississippi Delta, David graduated from Delta State University and continued to work at UPS, rising to become the Chief Executive Officer in 2014 and the Chairman of the Board in 2016. David is a trustee of the UPS Foundation, a member of the World Affairs Council of Atlanta, and the Business Roundtable. He and his wife Sherry founded and still support Delta State's Symposium on International Business. David received the prestigious Horatio Alger Award for Perseverance, Integrity, and a Commitment to Excellence. Congratulations to our honorees. And now for tonight's program. Our moderator will be Dr. Stan Deaton, the Dr. Elaine B. Andrews Distinguished Historian at the Georgia Historical Society, who will facilitate a discussion with our two honorees. Please welcome to the stage Georgia's newest trustees, Juanita Branco and David Abney.
Juanita, David, congratulations again on your induction as Georgia Trustees. Let's get right into the program. Okay, this first question is for both of you. Who inspired you when you were growing up, and why?
Well, I think for most people, the first people that inspire us are our parents, and I'm no exception. I think that I was very, very fortunate to have phenomenal parents. My mother was a teacher, my father was a lawyer, and they were dedicated to us getting an education. My mother was really the one who was pretty much laid down the law and made sure that we got our homework. I had a few issues with math, so she was a math person, so she made sure that I got that. My father always made sure that we thought about things. We would say, well, how do you make this, or how does this come about? And he'd say, well, how do you think? He really believed in the Socratic method, so we had to figure these things out ourselves. Another person that was tremendously influenced, and I don't want to go on too long, but I think most people remember the name of their first grade teacher, their kindergarten teacher, and mine was Mrs. Hurd, and she was so supportive and encouraging. One of the exercises that we had to do was to read, and we had to read until you missed a word. Well, I was an excellent reader, so my classmates always hated for me to go first. Well, one time I went first, and I ran into a word that I didn't understand. I couldn't pronounce, and it was phenomenal. I'm in kindergarten, 4 years old at this time. And tears swelled up in my eyes, and I was supposed to sit down. That was the rule. But Mrs. Hurd understood very clearly that this is somebody that needs a little encouragement. So she said, Juanita, take your time and do your phonetics. And we did. I was crying, and I would PH, what is that, F, and on. And so I finally got that word phenomenal. Well, it wasn't until I was much older that I realized the impact that I'd had on my life. For somebody to encourage you and say, you can do it. And so I will always appreciate Mrs. Hurd for the rest of my life.
As for me, first would be my father from a business standpoint. When I was a young kid, seeing how he worked and how he took his job seriously, and all the guidance and direction that he gave me over the years. So he would certainly be one. My statistics professor at Delta State, believe it or not, was very inspiring to me. He was one that recognized that I had some ability and really pressed me to get the best that he could get out of me. And really to a level that I was a little uncomfortable, you know. I thought his demands were a little too high. And come to find out, he was exactly what I needed. And then third would be a real strong leader at UPS, Ken Nestor, that I worked for 10 years or so. But really, after passing of my father, Ken became a second father to me. And Ken was the one that sat me down one day and said, you've got a lot of talent, you've got a lot of ability, you're not fully living up to your potential. I'm no longer going to give you a choice. You are going to step forward. You're going to get the best out of yourself. But it was what I needed to hear. Those are people that I needed at the times that they gave me that guidance and counsel.
Follow up on that one. Who was the person who most influenced your career, and how?
Well, my father was a lawyer, and when I was growing up, I had no real intentions of becoming a lawyer. But when I finished college, you know, you kind of wake up and realize, okay, now what's next? And so I decided to become a lawyer. And then when Gregory and I got married and we decided that we kind of needed to put food on the table, make a little money, and I grew up in the automobile industry, quite frankly. My father, though he was a lawyer, he also had a service station, and we called them filling stations back in the day. And I realized that entrepreneurship, owning my own business, was one of the most important things to me, and I wanted to do that. So it was more experiences and watching my father struggle in Shreveport, Louisiana as a African-American lawyer, a business owner, watching all of that. See, my grandparents were, frankly, one generation removed from slavery. And so for them, owning that land, that 400 acres in Grenada, Mississippi, for them, that equated to freedom. So that message was not lost on me. I understood very clearly that it was very important to be able to dictate your own future, your own income, and be in control of your own destiny. So entrepreneurship was the logical way forward.
And for me, it started when I was 19 years old. And as you could tell by the picture earlier, I wore this leather hat and I had real long hair and I thought I was the coolest person in the world. Obviously I wasn't, but I thought I was. And but I had my first supervisor at UPS. I'd been at the company for a year. I was a loader, as Tommy talked about earlier. And but this person sat me down one night, actually put his arm around my shoulder and started telling me what a great company UPS was and how much potential that he saw in me and thought that I could really do big things at UPS if I would dedicate myself to the company. At 19, I'd never had anyone but my parents talk to me that nicely before, right? And they had to, right? But he really got me to thinking. I'm getting chill bumps just now thinking about this. But from that night forward is when I became a UPSer for life. And I was going to be a history professor, and kind of ironic with this award tonight. But I became a UPS person at that point in time. And it was really, and sometimes we can underestimate the effect that we can have on people and that people can have on us. I don't know how my life would have turned out if this person had not talked to this 19-year-old, but I've thought about that throughout my career, making sure that I take the time, and I know that you do too, to talk to people and tell them how important they are.
I'm going to ask you now about a turning point moment. An event that happened in your life that, had it gone another way, your path might have been very different.
David,
I will take that one first. She's been running lead, so I'll give her a little time to think about it. For me, and Sherry will remember this quite well, I'd spent the first 10, 15 years of my career in Mississippi, different places in Mississippi and Tennessee, and then I was transferred to New Jersey. And in fact, I remember my boss asking me if I would like to go to New Jersey. I think my response was something along the lines, do I have a choice? And he politely explained that I really didn't. I said, I'd love to be there. And so we went, and it was during a very tough economic time. Interest rates were 15% or so, and well, what was really different is this was one of the largest facilities and one of the toughest running facilities that UPS had at the time. They wanted to see if I could adapt and get out of my comfort zone from kind of the laid-back Mississippi, Tennessee environment to where New Jersey was nothing laid-back or relaxing about it. It was as if I got my first international assignment. And that's not talking about the people in New Jersey, that's talking about my background being pulled out and placed there. And I really believe if that had not happened, that I would have never had the career path that I did. Now, for 4 years, I thought it was killing me, but in those 4 years, what didn't kill me did strengthen me and strengthen us as a family And I think that was a real key point.
And I guess I would say that I've had so many key turning points. If I had to categorize it, it would probably be recessions. The last time I counted, I think we've been through about 5 recessions. But when we opened in 1978, I think the first one was an energy crisis. And we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know what was going to happen. And we were literally scared to death, and so didn't know if we were going to be able to make payroll. How many times does that happen? A lot, not with you. I don't know why I'm looking at you, David. But it happened a lot. And so you're struggling entrepreneurs. And as I like to say sometimes, you spend a lot of time on your knees during times like that, Stan. And so, just getting through one crisis after another is always a turning point. I guess I'd ask myself, do you get accustomed to it? Do you get used to it? To some extent, I think you get better at it. And you always think, well, okay, things are fine, nothing can happen. And then, of course, COVID hits or the bridge collapses. Governor, thank you very much for helping us with that. There's always something that goes on and that there's always going to be an emergency. And so I think you get accustomed to getting prepared for, okay, what's the next thing that's going to happen? So there have been a lot of them, but every single one is so challenging that there is a chance that you might not get through it. So you are always aware of that there's an opportunity there for you to do better at the end of the thing, but there's always a chance that it might be the last one.
A question now about where you both came from and its influence on you. You both grew up in the Deep South. David, the Mississippi Delta, Juanita in Louisiana, when the South was still segregated. Can you talk about what influence that had on your life then and going forward?
Well, one of the things about my growing up in the South, which is Louisiana and Mississippi, as I mentioned earlier, I think, it may be a little bit unique. Yes, it was the segregated South, but I can honestly say I never remember any aspect of my life without being around white people. And I sometimes think how different it was back in the 60s and 50s than it is now even. Yes, the churches, which still remain one of the most segregated places on the planet on Sunday morning, but the grocery store owners on the corner were both white. We just knew white people. So I grew up with that. Yes, I went to predominantly African-American schools, but my teachers, when I went to Catholic high school, they were all the nuns were white. So being in a mixed environment, in a diverse environment, has never been something that I shied away from. Now, I'm not blind. I do know that there is such a thing as racism. I do know that it exists. And I deal with it when it needs to be dealt with. One of the things that background has caused me to do is to have blind hirings at all of our businesses. So we have one of the most diverse businesses that I've ever seen. One example of that is during the last Olympics, my guys in the room in the employee lounge, they put a flag that represented everyone every country that we had that was represented in the Olympics that was also an employee. Well, that was one of my proudest moments. And I think had I not had, and even in Grenada, Mississippi, where it was really, really segregated, my grandfather's products that he sold, white people would come to the farm all the time to get watermelons, to get cream that my grandmother made. It was just not a novelty, quite honestly.
And when Juanita talks about Grenada, Mississippi, that is 30 minutes away from where I grew up in Greenwood, so very close proximity. I will tell you, though, that I had a different upbringing, even though we were so close together. And that is that it was ingrained in myself and in others in these small towns, but probably in a lot of other places, that we were separate but equal, and that was talked about throughout my childhood, separate but equal, and why that was okay, and it really, I was not around many black people at all. In fact, when I went to work for UPS, that was the first real integrated environment that I had ever been in. And it really helped to open my eyes. In fact, one of my first bosses was an African American that really did a lot to help me along my career. And that's when I realized that when you're a group of people and you're trying to get things accomplished, and in this, you're interested in people being able to help you complete the mission, you don't care what religion they are, you don't care what color they are, national origin or anything else, you find out that we're so much more alike. And through UPS moving us all across the country, I really had to come to the realization that I had been told a lot of things that weren't true throughout my early childhood, and that it absolutely was separate. At least in my hometown, it was separate. There was nothing equal about it at all. And it was designed not to be equal. It was designed to maintain the status quo. And that has been one of the driving forces in my life and career, and is why I'm such a believer in diversity and inclusion and equity, is that I saw it. And I was told about it from one direction. Then I found out that there was something that was completely different, and that was a much more accurate portrayal. And to this day, anytime I have a chance, I focus on history from a Civil War, or now I've learned that even pre-Civil War, through civil rights, because that's the part of history that's had the most effect on my life.
Juanita, a question for you. You and your husband were the first African Americans to own a major automobile dealership in Atlanta. Of course, you had a career before that. What challenges did you personally face as a black woman in the barriers that you have broken?
Well, certainly as a woman, because it's no secret that the automobile business is pretty much a male-dominated field. And it was challenging. Once again, I go back to Arthur Bolton, who was my first boss at the state's Attorney General's office. And he sat me down when he hired me, and he said, well, the first thing he said was, you need to know that your secretary is probably going to make more money than you are. Good secretaries are hard to find, lawyers are a dime a dozen. So he set the tone that way. So in the legal field, it wasn't as prevalent. But in the automotive industry, it was really, really, particularly dealing with guys in the service department, I'd go down and say, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to change it, we're not going to do it this way. And oftentimes they would just ignore it, you know. And so I got sort of a reputation of being a little tough and a little rough, because I finally understood that I was either going to stand up for myself or I was going to get run over. And so the Juanita that I became during that era, I'm not all that proud of, because, you know, especially when you're talking to men, I have to be honest about this, they're half listening, number one, and they're half listening, and then number two, I think somehow they're kind of trained to tune you out. And so I just learned to speak very clearly, very concisely, and to make sure that there were consequences to not doing. Now, I'm always open to discussion. I've always been that way, and I always will be. But just outright defiance cannot be tolerated. And so when I got up the nerves and the good judgment to make sure that there were the appropriate consequences for those kinds of actions, it made a difference. It absolutely made a difference. So a lot of that responsibility, I think I learned, was on me. I mean, the world is what it is, and it's constantly changing, and thank God it's changing for women particularly. As an African American woman, not so much. I did not have, it was primarily as a woman that I was getting that level of disrespect.
A question for both of you. In your opinion, what are the most important elements of leadership?
First of all, you do have to be able to make tough decisions. I think that's important. But the way I look at it, the role of a leader, in my judgment, is to create an environment where other people can be successful. And I frankly will judge my managers and leaders in my company by how well they train someone else to be as good as, if not better than. You know, everybody in a work environment, everybody wants to take credit for the David Abneys of the world. You know, they want to take credit for that A+ student. Well, the reality is he was going to be successful anyway. You know, but my question is, what did you do for, I'm not going to ask you to work with a D student, but I am asking you to work with a C+ or a B student. What did you do with those students, that individual employee?
I think that leaders can survive and thrive in different environments, but some things are just very basic. One that I believe is in humble leadership. Humble leadership is giving our people the credit every time things go right. You make sure that your people know that they were responsible for that. Success breeds success, so it's very important you do that. Another part of leadership that's harder to do, but is equally important, is when things go wrong, they occasionally do, right, is the leader takes responsibility for that. You do not look for scapegoats. You do not look for people to blame. You accept the responsibility for that. When you do that, you gain the respect of your people tremendously. And so that's when a leader really has to step forward, is when things go wrong. And then the last thing you said that I wanted to get up and shout amen, so Southern upbringing, right? Yeah. Is making sure that at the end of the day, it's all about building people up. If you continue to build people up, and this certainly happened to me, and you can get people into believing in their self-worth, believing they can do more, and as soon as you get them to believe it, then it happens. And anybody can tear people down. Anybody can tell people how bad they're doing something. It takes a true leader to take what you referred to as maybe a C player and having that C player acting as a B+, and having the B player that becomes an A player, and no one even knew that they had that potential. And so we are just 100% together on leadership.
Yes, we are. And the other thing I find is that people really want that kind of leadership. Someone who cares about them, someone who makes the tough decisions. That's an important part of that leadership. So that garners confidence in the leadership when they know you're going to, you know, check the bad stuff and encourage the good stuff. And I think that's just an important component of leadership. I think that all goes together.
When you survey the American landscape and you look in your crystal ball, what do you think America will look like in the year 2050? Are you hopeful? Are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic about the future?
All right, I'll start that. I would say cautiously optimistic. I do believe there's a lot of potential for this country and for the world. I believe that technology is going to allow us to be a much more just world, a much fairer world, and I believe there's a lot of potential. I believe in this youngest generation of Americans, they have more information at their fingertips than we had by walking in an entire library, right? I mean, it's just that much difference. But I think the problems, many of the problems that we are having as a society are at least being discussed, which for years and years they weren't even being discussed. And there is accountability that's starting to occur. And I think we're at a real inflection point. And I believe that if we have the courage And if we have the determination and the grit that we can look back on the 2020s and beyond and say that is when the United States as a country and when the world really started making changes. And now, do I believe it's going to happen if people continue to try to claim the status quo? Of course not. And there are going to be people that think they will lose status if others gain. But we have to realize it's not a win or lose situation, that we can rise all boats if we all work together and create this environment. So I don't think it comes automatic. I don't think that it's a sure bet by any means, but I'm cautiously optimistic that this could be an inflection point and we could see things get much better.
I can't disagree with anything that you've said, David. My hope, like David, is in the younger people. And they're kind of all over the page, but their access to technology and their ability to want to do the right thing. For instance, in the issue of diversity. Young people are very comfortable in diverse environments. And I think, again, it's been statistically proven in education, people learn better in a diverse environment, and people do better in the workplace. Diversity of thought, that is so important to moving forward. So if we can get some of those type issues behind us, it's going to be tough, but it's going to take everybody, not just black people, not just people of color speaking up. Everyone has to speak up and say, let's put this issue behind us, because it is, causing us to fall behind. Letting that issue of racism and non-inclusion, this zero-sum game, so to speak, pull us down. So if we can get beyond that issue, I really think it opens a lot of doors. I think the younger people are ready, but I don't count us out of the formula either, because experience matters. So if we can put us baby boomers in the room with the young people and we find that common denominator, I think therein lies our way forward. Looking at the old, what went wrong, what went right, the good, the not so good, and moving that forward into the future. And so I think that there is a real opportunity, because the world is going to be different in the world that we look at even as 20 years from now, because these issues will really unite us, because we have to solve them. It's just as simple as that. We have to solve them. So I'm maybe just a hair more optimistic than David perhaps, but I'm still cautious about it. But I think we have to keep working. We cannot give up. We cannot give up.
A key word you said was denial. And denial is the greatest barrier to meaningful change and success. It really is. People aren't going to admit there's a problem. It doesn't matter whether it's social issues or climate issues or whatever. You first have to admit that there's a problem, which I think is starting to happen, not fully, but it's starting. And then you have to do the more difficult process of figuring out what the solution. I will tell you though, and this is not a plug, but this is one of the real advantages, I think, of the Georgia Historical Society, is the way they portray history, or I should say we portray history. And that is not to try to influence it based on individual norms or expectations, but to call it the way that it is, because you first have to do that admission. And then you can use what you've learned in the past, including the mistakes that we have made as a society, to make real progress in the future. So I believe history provides a real good vision of where the world needs to move to based on what has happened in the past.
Well, Juanita, David, congratulations again, and thank you so much for this program.
Well, thank you, sir. All right, sir.
Thank you, David and Juanita. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for honoring us with your presence. Congratulations again on being named a Georgia trustee. And many thanks to all of you who have tuned in to tonight's program. We hope you'll stay with us just a bit longer as we're going to offer a toast to the new Georgia trustees and to the state of Georgia. Our deepest thanks once again to the Board of Curators and sponsors and host committee members who made the 2021 Georgia History Festival possible. We're especially grateful for the support of Georgia Power, Delta Airlines, UPS, the Home Depot Foundation, Gulfstream, Brasseler USA, Camden Real Estate Company, Chick-fil-A, Coca-Cola, Kreitz Auto Group, Jepson Associates, Macy's, and Synovus. I now invite everyone watching to join us as we offer a toast to the new Georgia trustees and to our state's birthday. As we salute them, we reaffirm our commitment to the noble principle of not for self but for others upon which the colony of Georgia was founded. Tonight, we toast with a special drink created just for this occasion and aptly named True. Since its founding, Georgia's motto has been wisdom, justice, and moderation. May we, the citizens of this state, remain true to these virtues, and may our path to the future always be illuminated by the light of history. I give you, the Georgia trustees for 2021, Juanita Branco and David Abney, and I give you the great state of Georgia. Thank you for joining us, and good night.